I was asking about what's on focus on Editor's Cut. I'm going to hop across to Agam, and the two of us are going to talk about PSUs, Agam, isn't it? And what better time to talk about it than elections?
Yeah, in fact, that is what we're going to talk about. How PSUs have done before elections, what they have done through the course of the elections, and can we draw out some trends based on that? And when we talk about PSUs, we're not talking about banks, we're talking about a whole gamut of public sector companies beyond the financial sector. And we've seen some pretty interesting trends playing out here, Niraj.
Yeah, Agam, I love your thoughts here, but I've borrowed some of this data from a story that our colleague Chinmay filed, so you can actually log in and read up that story as well. It's got some of these data points, but you know, the only closest resemblance to March, or rather May or June 2024, if you will, is what happened in 2019, because it was a year of re-election, and therefore we've only captured data from 2019, haven't gone back to 2014. There was a slightly different period, so excuse us for that, viewers. But from March to May 2019, which was the period where the verdict came in. Right. So what me and Chinmay tried to do was look at the 2-month period before the verdict, right? Which is where the election season is in full steam. So Nifty PSE actually gained quite significantly from March to May 2019, not quite significantly, but it had, because it had done a little bit ahead of that. So 7.2% Jan to March 2019, and therefore March to May was about 0.5. And a lot of these very popular stocks, you know, the railway stocks, which were the first darlings of the market the whole of last year, actually had a bit of a corrective move. So if you think of it, some of the more popular names actually had a pullback in that period. So if you're trying to bet on how some of these most popular themes will actually do well, be mindful that the last season, Railways, Container Corp, Ircon, etc., Titagarh, etc., didn't have that great a run. Right. So that's to be kept in mind. But you could argue that railways have only come into flavor in the last 12 months. So that argument is valid. So then let's look at some of the others. So, and again, please interject wherever your thoughts are, Agam. I'm just moving ahead as the graphics are. So then I looked at some other fertilizer names, because usually people say, oh, fertilizers, there'll be something on the policy, etc., maybe in the budget, so on and so forth. So just choosing again the March to May period, and then the Jan to March period, the 3 months preceding. So most of the fertilizer names as well actually didn't have a great run ahead, and didn't have a great run during the 2 months as well. Now, if that is any indication, again, you could always argue that the fundamental factors were different and the scene was different there, the sentiment might have been different there, so on and so forth. But this is hard data. And data suggests that if there is one pocket that you should not try and preempt during the election season, it's fertilizers.
Right, absolutely. So, well, a couple of questions. Firstly, Niraj, you know, it's about defense companies, because they have run up so massively ahead of elections. That perhaps becomes the most interesting, you know, sector here. And valuations at this point in time, people are saying that it's okay, you know, because of the kind of visibility that they have going forward. Valuations are going to take care of themselves. Still, there is, of course, then once again, there's an indication that the budget is going to be a big bang budget this time around. And because of that, there's going to be a lot of anticipation around defense companies. So how do you think that things could potentially pan out, given the fact that they've already run up so much? And it's the same for fertilizers, by the way, because fertilizers, once again, will be in focus for the budget. Yeah,
so you could argue that fertilizers, because data is suggesting that even if they've had a run-up, or if they have not, in the preceding thing once, which is Jan to March, they've fell the last time as well, and some of them didn't do well any which is before. And I don't know if there is a policy indication out here for fertilizers this time around as well. So let's leave that out. Defense is interesting for more reasons than one. So if you look at 2019, Agam, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at that point of time, defense was not in so much of flavor either, fundamentally. The stocks had a good run Jan to March 2019, and then followed it up with a very strong performance post that as well. Garden Reach, BEL, BDL, Midhani, BEML. You look at the performance that some of these stocks had, and Garden Reach was up 7% Jan to March, up 19.8% March to May. BEL 6.9% Jan to March, 12.7% March to May. Even BDL, which was up about 4.5% Jan to March, followed it up with a 5%. So as much as the market may have thought that these stocks have run up, they actually had a fairly good move after that. And you know, I was reading this Bloomberg story overnight, wherein, and me and Tamanu are talking about it on the trade setup as well, that this story says that would the European nations have to rethink what they have thought about wars and defense spending?
Right.
Because hitherto they have spent, I think the story quotes about $2.2 trillion or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Correct. I may be mistaken here and there, but just humor me for the time being. Effectively, they are saying that the high spend that they have done is nowhere close to what they would have to spend if we are returning to the Cold War era, because Russia is knocking on Europe's doors, China is tugging at the heels, and there is Middle Eastern tension. So if all three are put together, the Bloomberg analysis estimates that spending, the total spend, would have to go up 5 times. Now, India was not a part of the global supply chain linkages back in 2019, but India is firmly a part now, right?
Now, yes.
Your conversations with companies would have suggested that. My conversations are suggesting that as well. So if that is indeed the case, could higher defense spend potentially globally also mean positivity for Indian farmers?
Yeah, and I totally take your point there, Niraj, because when it comes to defense, the kind of traction that they are seeing when it comes to export markets as well, and there has been increased activity from exports. It's not that the Indian defense sector only caters to the Indian government anymore. That's certainly not the case. And again, we need to keep an eye on the kind of big bang budget announcement that can come through. Of course, let's not forget the indigenization movement that we've seen over the course of the last 5 years specifically, which is why defense maybe was not as much in focus back in 2019 as much as it is now, because in the course of the last 5 years, we've had about 3 or 4 indigenization lists already, and there's expectation of more to come through, backed by Atmanirbhar Bharat. So that's something to keep an eye on. I just wanted to make another pointer when it comes to fertilizers. A lot will also depend on the summers, the kind of impact it has on crops, as well as monsoons going in. And I reckon that based on that, maybe the government will take a lot of those factors into consideration, and then perhaps make their whatever amendments they have to when it comes to the budget. So sure, it is in the hang of the fertilizers, but defense is certainly something that we're going to keep an eye on.
Yeah, most certainly.
Yeah, well, there you have it. That's how things have rolled in the past, but can we expect the same in the future over the next few months? That's a wait and watch.